deal. First off, I'd like to thank your club, Rodney and you and Randall, for inviting me to come in and do this. So that's the first piece. So this is quite an honor to do something like this, especially for such a large base of members. Just for one club, that's pretty exceptional. And you, each of you, need to know that they have spoken highly of you as kind of like the premier folks associated with the club. So obviously, you must be doing some pretty cool things together that builds a really nice relationship along with some good bourbon. So the first piece is, most of you know that Buffalo Trace, for the last 10 years, has become the most award-winning distillery in the world. And this past, I guess 2 days ago, Jim Murray just announced that there was a whiskey that was created up in Canada that became the #1 whiskey in the world. But in #2 place was George T. Stagg Jr. So it was the #2 whiskey in the world, and guess what? It was the #1 bourbon in the world. The #2 whiskey, #1 bourbon. So that's the Stagg Jr. And we just did a tasting today with Chris Comstock and Blue Mabel, and it is really good. So if you get a chance to get a taste of that, we did a comparison of that with the George T. Stagg Antique, and the Stagg Jr. has a little bit more robustness to it, and it really opens up when you take a sip of it. So that's the news of the day. Is Stagg Jr. is the #2 whiskey in the world and the #1 bourbon in the world. Now, having shared that with you, Buffalo Trace Distillery, if you've heard about what we're doing, we're in the midst of a $1.2 billion expansion. They are building a new warehouse every 4 months. Each new warehouse is 58,800 barrels. They will do that for the next 8 years. So currently at Buffalo Trace sits on 440 acres of land, and on that property currently reside over 700,000 barrels of whiskey. So there's currently enough whiskey at that site that if we stop making it today, we could bottle for the next 20 years before we ran out. So that ought to make you feel better already. So the next piece, of those 700,000 barrels, the reason that I get excited about tastings is, of those 700,000 barrels, do you know that over 30,000 of those barrels are experimental? So currently we have more experimental barrels on premise than some distillers have as their actual inventory. And those are the bourbons for tomorrow. The bourbons that we're playing with right now are for 2040, 2050, and beyond. And some of them are unbelievably good. So we've learned that we can actually do things, and we can pull flavors out of the oak without having to finish them in another barrel. So that's what we're really excited about, because it's all the natural flavors of that particular species of oak. So now, some of you I have met, many of you I have not met. I'm not sure how much you know about me. If you've seen the documentary Neat, you know a little bit about my dad and my family and my granddad. But the reason that I'm with you today is because of a promise. So what had happened was, I promised my father and my granddad that at some point in my life I would try to work at Buffalo Trace Distillery. My father wanted that to become a reality while he was still alive. He wanted to be able to share with me and walk around the distillery with me, to make sure that I understood aging characteristics, different places in the warehouse, how to determine the quality of your whiskey before it even goes into the barrel, just a number of things like that. So I got a chance to do that with him. And I also got a chance to roll out help him roll out a couple of the million barrels. So the 5th and 6th millionth, the 6th millionth was the last barrel that Dad rolled into the warehouse. And he died shortly after that. So he had become the only living person to personally handle every millionth barrel that's ever come from Buffalo Trace Distillery since Prohibition. So he also used to handle the Van Winkle barrels because they were very delicate. So he passes away, and they wanted the tradition to continue. So Chris Comstock and Meredith Moody and Mark Brown asked if I would continue that legacy. So what I did was I got my grandson out of school, and which was kind of fun to tell the teacher I needed to get him out to roll some whiskey barrels with me. But Osiris gets out of school, and he helps me roll the 7 millionth barrel into Warehouse V, just like I'd helped my father roll the barrels before. So it's kind of like a legacy thing that's pretty cool. And the 6 millionth barrel went to nonprofits, and it was just announced that the 6 millionth barrel, if you've ever seen the display case for the 6 millionth barrel, it has raised over $1 million for charities. So I'm sure that Elmer and my dad and them are smiling down right about now because of that achievement. So that's some of the last stuff that they were directly involved in. Some of these bourbons that we're going to be tasting tonight will be some of the last barrels that they got a chance to handle at Buffalo Trace Distillery, but they never got a chance to taste them to their final maturity. So that's part of a legacy. Now, the deal is this. We're getting ready to get started with the tasting, and there's a couple of unspoken rules. The first unspoken rule. Have you ever thought about this? The unspoken rule. You will never, ever, ever bring out your good stuff with people you don't like. If I don't like you, I won't even tell you I got this because I don't want to give it to you. So it stays tucked away. The second unspoken rule. You ever thought about this? Second unspoken rule. When you do bring it out, they're going to have to listen to what you went through to get it. Now, you're not going to pour it until they listen to how you had to stand in line for 3 days, and how you had to know somebody that knew somebody, and how you won the lottery ticket, all that stuff. Those stories go with it that sets the stage for you pouring them a drink. You ever thought about that? And so now you've thrown that line out there, you got the bait on it. So then they get excited about it, and let's set the hook and you start bringing them in. Here's the deal. You ever thought about this? No matter how happy you are to see someone, family members, friends, no matter how happy you are to see them, if you are in the process of going to do something else, if you're going to another event, it's not the right time. For some reason inside, you know it's not the right time to bring this bottle out because you're getting ready to do something else, and you're not going to rush through it. So you only bring out your good stuff when you're about to sit down and get comfortable and spend time with someone that you truly enjoy being with. And all of a sudden, if you've ever done this, you could be sitting around, you're laughing, you're talking, you're telling stories, you're reminiscing, you're kicking back, and all of a sudden you have nailed that bottle, and you look around, the bottle's just about empty, and all of a sudden you say, oh my Lord, look at the time. And you realize for that moment, with those folks you were with, time ceased to be a factor. I call them memory moments. And so whenever I experience that with somebody, whoever I'm drinking with from the bottle, we all sign the bottle and we date it. And it becomes it becomes a memory moment in time of when I spent some time with some folks that maybe I'll never sit down with that group or with those folks again. But I've got that memory, and when I can look at that bottle, I remember when they were there, and it will immediately refresh the conversations and the moment that we had together. So just something that you can do when you get some of these unicorns and you bring it out and you think enough of those folks to pour them a drink, get them to sign and date your bottle. and you will be amazed at the timeline that you create and the number of people that you've actually sat down and shared bourbon with in years gone by. And all I do with mine is I put amber-colored marbles in them. And these craft shops now have diodes. They do them for outdoor events and stuff like that. It's a little cork, and inside the cork is a battery. And the battery has a string of diodes on it. And I usually put those marbles down in there with that little diode, and you can just turn the cork and it lights it up. It makes a beautiful accent lighting. And the beauty of it is you don't destroy those bottles. So you don't have to worry about drilling into them and making a lamp. The kicker is I can take some of these and put them right up in with my other bourbons. And because those diodes don't produce heat, it doesn't affect the other products. Pretty cool?
Awesome.
But people will look at it and say, I can't believe you drank that. And you say, yeah, but look at who I drank it with. Let me tell you what we were doing. And all of a sudden, you start sharing memories with them. You plant seeds. And all of a sudden, they start talking to you about someone that they did the same thing with a bottle they'd never thought they would find. And you begin to realize the product in this bottle is nothing but conduit. It provides you with the opportunity to spend time with someone you truly enjoy being with. Kind of crazy. But that's why I don't say bourbon. After that bottle that I shared with my dad and my brother, it was the last bottle we ever drank together. I did something stupid. And then we're going to go into this tasting. And here's what I did. I don't know. These old whiskey guys, the only one that's around right now that I got to spend time with was Jimmy Russell. But Lincoln Henderson, I love Lincoln Henderson, but he's gone now. Very quiet and humble person. If you ever talk to Parker Beam or Booker No or any of those guys, Jimmy is the only one, and they're all like that. They're all very quiet and subtle. But they're some of the coolest folks that you'll ever meet. And when they start talking, Freddie listens. Because it's not the obvious, it's not the things that come out, it's the subtleties. So whenever you're doing tastings, whenever you're visiting these sites, look beyond the obvious. Look beyond the obvious. And those are the pieces that you will ask questions about, because when you ask those kind of questions that said, I'm not looking at just the obvious, I'm looking at something that I've detected or flavor, that's when they open up. Because they know then that you're really interested and you're not just blowing smoke, which is what a lot of people do. They'll just ask, like you were talking about, do you have any Blantons? Can't find no Blantons. Well, that says that why are you wasting time on my tour? If that's all you want, the Blantons. Well, go downstairs and stand in line, you know? But we get a lot of people are really excited about it. So just remember that. And here's what happens with Freddie with that bottle of Pappy. Dad rolls out the 6 millionth barrel as a way of saying thank you to my father. Julian gave us original bottles of 20-year-old Pappy, the ones that used to have the wax on top. He bottled it himself over in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, put the label on the whole bit. And he said, I want you to share this with your dad. Here's what stupid little Freddie did. So I take the bottle home. I'm so happy. This 20-year-old Pappy worth a nickel. And I'm telling my dad about it. My dad's looking at me and he says, I'm fully aware of the bourbon, Freddie. He says, I was the one that rolled the barrels in the warehouse. I know all about that. He said, would you just go on? He said, would you just go on and pour the drink? So being the wise person that I was and knowing how much this whiskey was worth, I take the cork out. I put a little bit in my glass, a little bit in my brother's glass, a little bit in my glass, and I go to put the cork back in the bottle. Well, you know, have you ever thought about this? When you're doing wine, and it's a real good bottle of wine, after you do the pour, you set the bottle down and you take the cork and you put the cork beside the bottle. You're letting the wine breathe, but you're also telling those that are there at the table with you, it's okay to have another glass of wine if you want. But what do we do with that bottle of bourbon that you stood in line for 4 days for? I pour that little drink, I put that cork back in that bottle. One and done, son. I put that bottle away because I don't want you to have any more of it. So what my father shared with me, after I'd done pour, I was about to put the cork back into the bottle and put it away. And my father looked at me. He gave me that look like, you know, when you really screw up, that's the look he gave me. I said, what on earth are you doing? I said, Dad, this is a really good bourbon. He said, Freddie, I'm aware of that. I said, well, Dad, I said, I'm trying to save it so we can do some more toast later on. My father looked at me and he smiled and he said, Freddie, your father is 94 years old. He says, I really don't have a lot of toasting left in me. He says, never ever forget why you bring the bottle out. And he says, if you're blessed enough to have a good bottle, make a memory, but make it a happy memory. It was the first time that my father and my brother and I, they were both terminally ill, and it was the first time my father and my brother and I sat down together. No TV, no radio, no distractions, no one else around us, just the three of us laughing, reminiscing, talking about things that he had done that he didn't know we knew he'd done. And then he started sharing stuff that he had found out we had done. And he had never even told all these years stuff that we had really done that was pretty bad. But he laughed about it because he had done some of the same things. The kicker is 3 hours later, the bottle was empty. Okay. It was one of the few times that I ever put my father to bed. He was drunk as a skunk. We had a blast. And the irony of the whole thing is 9 months later, they were both gone. So if I'd been stupid and I'd said, Dad, that's enough, one drink all we need, and I put the bottle away, I would have probably still had that bottle of Pappy. But every time I looked at it, I would have realized I missed an opportunity to spend time with my father and my brother that I can never, ever retrieve. So just a thought as we go through this, if you're an old whiskey person in this industry and you happen to like aged bourbons, here's the way it works. If you create something, let's just use, we'll use Pappy as an example. We'll go up to the 8-year-old Sazerac and 20-year-old Pappy. Watch how this works. First off, you have to create a recipe. You have to start with an experiment. Then you take that experimental barrel and you put it in the warehouse. And you make a couple of barrels of it because you put it in a couple of different places to see how it's going to age. All right. And then maybe 8, 10, 15 years later, you realize it's really something quite good, like Sazerac or George T. Stagg or William LaRue Weller or Pappy 20. But you have just spent almost 40 years of your life between your experiment, putting that product in the barrel, and letting it reach its maturity. 40 years of your life has passed. And with that, you make another batch. The next batch, by the time it reaches its maturity, you're 80 years old. And what very few people realize in the bourbon industry, it is very rare that any of these old guys ever get to taste their third batch to its final maturity. So that's the legacy you need for the next generation. A lot of the bourbons that people are enjoying today, those old guys never got a chance to taste it.
That's crazy.
And that's the world we live in. So when you sit around and you do your tasting, make sense? So when you sit around and do your tastings, try to think about that because really good bourbons aren't meant to be rushed. If you shoot them, you're going to miss 3/4 of the flavor. But we're going to do this tasting, and I'm going to show you how you can approach, because there's a lot of new craft products coming out now. I'm going to show you how we get into that. It's pretty cool. So, any questions up to this point? We're going to start with the Weller 12.
Hey, before you go into that Weller 12, we did get one question from Katie, and she wanted to know, what is your favorite all-time barrel or batch?
Wow.
And that's from Kristen. I'm sorry, it's from Kristen Casey. I apologize.
Okay. All right. So when people ask me that, they expect me to say a product from Buffalo Trace. But my favorite, my all-time favorite is A.H. Hirsch when it was made in Pennsylvania. It's 16 years old. It is unbelievably good. And I think that the final residing barrels, they bottled it at Buffalo Trace. So those barrels came into Buffalo Trace out of Pennsylvania, and we bottled it. Prentice Imports up in New York, I think they're the only ones that have any of that bourbon left. Mm. So if you are blessed enough and you can be somewhere, I tell people when you start talking about unicorns, and you go to a real nice restaurant or bar and you see some of these, get with a couple of your buddies and get a flight. And that way you don't tap yourself out getting 3 or 4 of these things, because some of them get pretty expensive, get pretty pricey. But the deal is you get a flight, you pool your money, but what actually happens is it's a memory moment. And you can sip on it and you chat between your sips of the different pours. And what it does is it gives your palate a chance to recalibrate. And all of a sudden, sometimes you realize that the bourbon that you were really seeking, because you heard so much about it, there's another bourbon that costs half as much that you like better. So never let price and proof be the determiners of what you are about to buy, because they have nothing to do with quality or taste. Cool?
Super cool. Was that the 20-year A.H. Hirsch or the 16-year? You remember?
I think it was a 16-year-old. It was in like it had a white label on it. It kind of reminded me of almost like, you know how the Van Winkles have some of the stuff they just put in a print, red and white, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But the guy that I shared it with, I had gotten a bottle of George T. Stagg Antique, and the guy's name is Jimmy Hirsch. How about that? Mm. And Jimmy had come down to the distillery with a bunch of his buddies, and he had a bottle of that because of something else that we had done together. And he opened up the A.H. Hirsch. I opened up the George T. Stagg, and we did a toast together. Mm. And he has a bar here in Lexington now called Bourbon and Rye. The deal, though, is we took a toast and we swapped bottles. And he gave me the A.H. Hirsch. I gave him the George T. Stagg. And that was the first time that I'd ever tasted a product. I thought it is so smooth. I thought it was a wheated bourbon, and it's not. It's a rye bourbon. So if you get a chance to taste it, you're going to get blown away with that one. But now it's, mixers, they've got, Hirsch and all those, they're doing some stuff here, but nah. A.H. Hirsch is probably the ultimate in one that I enjoy. And my second most favorite is William LaRue Weller Antique. Mm. So, yeah. So William LaRue Weller basically is uncut, unfiltered 15-year-old Pappy, because it's 15 years old. But you get all the oils and fatty acids in that Weller, and you're about to see some of that here, but this one has been cut to 90 proof. So are we ready to go on a journey?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now watch how this works. I'm going to show you a crazy way of doing a tasting. Before you do anything to your glass, a lot of people will instinctively pick up the glass. Oh, something very important. When you're doing a tasting, you want all of your glasses to be the same. So it doesn't matter what they are, but they should all be the same. So if you're doing a tulip design, you want all of your glasses to be a tulip design. And I'm going to show you why. Watch this. So traditional Glencairn glass, right? It's the chimney with, it's the bowl with the narrow chimney, right? But the newer glasses are a tulip design. And if you look, Notice that? I can actually swallow up the chimney on the traditional glass. So why would they change the design to do something like this? So this tulip design is because the proof of bourbon keeps going up. And so what you have to do is when you focus those volatiles, those vapors, you've got to get them to disperse again. Otherwise, they'll overwhelm the nose. Basically, all you get is the alcohol, and you miss the subtleties. Make sense? So watch this. I'm going to show you. I've got traditional Glencairn glasses because none of the stuff with highest proof we have is 100 proof. So I spoon around with some other stuff today. So watch this. You got your water? So what you're going to do with the first one, with Weller, you're just going to pick the glass up. Don't swirl it. Pick it up and just bring it to your nose. However you nose your bourbon, it's your way. So I'm not going to tell you how to nose your bourbon, but do it the way that you've become accustomed to. Some people like to open their mouths up. Some people do all kinds of weird stuff. And some people stick their nose all the way down in there. It's whatever works for you, but all you want to do is be consistent with the way you smell your bourbon. Now, you got that? That's without doing anything to it. Now, what I want you to do is I'm going to show you why you do this. Swirl it around. You know how when you take your bourbon, you always swirl it around like that? Swirl it around and then bring it back up to your nose again and notice something. The flavors are much more pronounced. So what actually happens is the atmospheric pressure is pushing down on the whiskey in the glass. Of a Glencairn glass, what you do is you increase the surface area, and it makes it easier for the volatiles to escape, and you can appreciate the aging characteristics when you do that. And the first thing you notice on this is it's very soft with the nose. It's not scorching the hairs out of your nose. Okay? So older bourbons are going to be lower down in the warehouse. So your Weller 12s, all that are down near the ground level. So we got some there. On a tour today, I just showed them some of those barrels. They are old and moldy looking. And I tell people all the time, the uglier the barrel, the better the bourbon. So kind of like being at a bar late at night. Now, here's the deal. You know what I'm talking about, right? So, you ready for this? Watch this one. We've all had bourbon. You guys have been tasting bourbon. Probably you've got more of an inventory of things that y'all have tried and sold together than I have. Here's the deal. Watch how the water changes things. What I want you to do for me is I want you to take a sip of water first. So in the industry, they call this cleansing your palate. I just call it rinsing out your mouth. Okay? So swig of water. You ready for this? Now watch this. You are not going to drink this Weller 12. All you're going to do is make contact with it. So all I want you to do with this Weller 12 is splash it up against your lips. Just take it, splash it up against your lips. You will instinctively stick out your tongue. And the first thing you notice is it made your lips tingle just a little bit, but the tip of your tongue told you it was a fruity flavor. What we don't realize is that's all your body needs to know the alcohol concentration of this drink. And it also tells you that when it does strike the palate, it's going to be a little bit fruity and sweet. So now you're acclimated to it. So what's about to happen now is we were taught when we were in school that we had these 4 quadrants on our tongue: sweet, sour, bitter. You know, those old school fake news. You've got 9,000 receptacles on your tongue, and you taste things in parts per million. You've been doing it since you were a kid. So that's why you've always had favorite foods and favorite ice creams and favorite sodas. You had a relative that made a dish that you look forward to going to their house because you really liked it. Because you remember everything about something that you enjoy, and the brain just makes a footprint of it. It becomes a benchmark for that product. So you ready for this? Now, this is the way this works. We're not going to drink this neat to start. You're going to take another sip of water, and you're going to hold the water in your mouth. And the reason you're going to do this is The first sip of this bourbon, you're going to dilute it. And you're going to get beyond the alcohol, and you're going to taste the other flavors associated with this Weller 12. Watch this. Sip of water, hold the water in your mouth, and take a swig of your Weller 12. Notice how it opens it up. So now you get a whole boat, huh? You get a whole boatload of flavors. All right. Your mouth is watering.
Mm-hmm.
I got some cherries. Now, it lingers. Did you notice the viscosity? So watch what happens. So what happens is Weller and Pappy are the same, but we bring it off the still at a much, much lower proof than our other bourbons and whiskeys. It goes into the barrel at a very low proof. So remember we talked about the proof? So it's coming off the still about 114. It's going into the barrel about 114. All right. And then we're going to let Mother Nature bring the proof up over time. So that's why when we do this neat, let's try this again, this time without water. And notice something. Now you can feel it going up against the roof of the mouth. That's the alcohol. Now you got a little bit of a burn. So that burn, that heat that you're feeling, that's when they talk about tannins. Well, tannin in early European days merely meant the relationship of the spirit to the wood. It didn't matter whether it was a wine or whiskey or bourbon. That heat tells you that where this barrel set, there were temperature fluctuations. Got that? But now you'll notice that I can play with this and I can hold a different amount of water in my mouth and I can pull other flavors out of this Weller. So it's something kind of cool to try with some of your different bourbons is play with them. Most people don't realize the ideal temperature for serving your bourbon is just like a bottle of wine. It's 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you warm up bourbon, alcohol becomes more of a dominant factor. If you chill it down a little bit, it suppresses the alcohol vapors, they contract, and the fruity sweet flavors come out. So that's why you've been pouring your bourbon over ice, or you've been putting it in the fridge. I got a couple that I put in the freezer. I sip them like a drambuie, and I smoke a cigar with them. And I let the smoke from the cigar warm it up in my mouth while I'm sipping on it, and you get kind of like the peaty kind of a thing that you might get with a good scotch or something like that. I just do it with my bourbon. Got that?
Yep.
Okay. So low and slow, Weller 12-year-old, 90 proof. And here's what I want you to do. Put your Weller in one hand and your Buffalo Trace in the other. Don't swirl the glasses around. And bring the Buffalo Trace up to your nose. And bring the Weller up to your nose. Rodney looks like he's got an arsenal back there. Good luck, Rodney. You got him?
Got him.
All right. So if you notice,
he shares all of them too, Freddie.
Excellent, excellent. We had a little discussion about that last night, which was really kind of cool. He and Randy and I, we just talked about things like that you do. Have you ever thought about it? You don't bring it out because you have to. You bring out your good stuff because you want to.
Right.
There's a big difference between somebody asking you to bring out your good stuff and you sharing it with them before they even ask. It's a big difference between the two. So the deal is this, and you just nose them straight up. A little bit of difference, but the Weller really stands out when you just do them like that. Now, swirl them around. Let's increase the surface area. Swirl them around and notice something. Now, when I stick my nose down in that glass, it actually burns, the Buffalo Trace actually burns inside my nose. I can stick my nose all the way down in the Weller 12. It's not there.
Mm.
So even though they are both 90 proof, you get an appreciation for where that barrel aged, because Buffalo Trace sits in the middle floors where there's constant temperature fluctuation. So it gets pretty warm up in that area. And these Wellers come from the lower part of the warehouse where there's not as much heat associated with how it ages. So it produces a little bit softer, smoother nose. All right. So let's try this little thing, this process again. Sip of water to get rid of the Weller. Let's take this Buffalo Trace and bump it up against our lips, just like we did the Weller. Notice it makes your lips tingle more. When you stick out your tongue, you get that punch right on the tip of your tongue. It's real spicy and peppery, just on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
And that's that heat. That's that heat from where it's set on the middle floors of the warehouse. And just that quickly, if you are a novice and you do this, I tell people all the time, never ever pour the water into the drink. If you're getting a new bourbon you're not familiar with, if you pour that water in that drink and overdilute, you're screwed, because you can never get back to the original taste. And I'm not going to give you another pour because you just messed up the first one. All right? So, ready? But now you're acclimated to the alcohol concentration and the aging characteristics of the whiskey in this glass. So now let's take another sip of water. And with the water in your mouth, let's take a swig of this Buffalo Trace. Isn't that amazing? So I still get a little bit of oak and char. I get a little bit of the punch of the rye, but it's nice and smooth. Now, you ready for this? Now, take a swig of it just neat, straight up. Very same product, and all you're going to do is take a swig of it without any water dilution. And all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, it didn't knock my socks off at all. So what actually happens is you become acclimated to the subtleties in the product, and you're gradually introducing the palate to that alcohol. And so it doesn't slam you because you're used to that taste profile. Pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So when you get back, like I say, you can do this now. Now that you've done that, you can now take these two glasses and swirl them around, and you can take a taste. Here's your heads up. Whenever you're doing a wheated bourbon and a rye recipe bourbon, you always do the wheated bourbon first. And the reason is it's a softer taste profile. So if you start with something that's high and hot, it will overwhelm your palate. And so when you taste the other one, basically it's masked. You don't pick up on many of the taste profiles because the alcohol from the other one and the heat has already dominated the palate. So let's try this. If you notice the two, all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, that Weller really smells kind of sweet now. Very soft and sweet. Now let's just neat, straight up, take a sip of the Weller. Now come right back with the Buffalo Trace and watch this. Notice the difference? So when you're with friends, and you'll have a lot of them that you're talking about how good something is, and they'll come back with, well, that Buffalo Trace is still burning in the back of my throat right now. It's still working. So when you get with friends and you do stuff like this, and they're the ones saying, "Oh, I don't know why you made such a big deal out of this. It's all the same whiskey." And you give them a little test like this, and you show them how to do this, and all of a sudden they'll realize there is a difference. And the other thing is, if you've got 3 or 4 of them, they may stumble upon something that they like, that they would have never, ever even decided to try it because they were approaching it the wrong way. Cool?
Very.
Next up, E.H. Taylor. So Taylor and Buffalo Trace are the same mash bill. Buffalo Trace runs 7 to 9 years old. It's a 90 proof, but they all come off the still at about 140 and they go into the barrel about 125. But what we're going to do is bottled and bond means it's going to be at least 4 years old. And it's all from the same season. So this taste profile, even though it's a small batch bourbon, all the barrels were made at the same time and basically aged the same time. And so when you marry them together, it's a very complex product, simply because the barrel staves are going to make a difference, because there's 30 to 36 staves in the making of the barrel. They randomly reach and pick up the pieces of wood. So you can have, the first piece of this is you could have up to 36 different trees in the making of one barrel. And there was just an announcement. There's another company out there, another distillery out there right now. I think Cooper's making the barrels for them. And I think they're using 37 to 38 staves in the making of the barrel. So what they're doing is they're reducing down the size of some of the staves, and they're increasing the size of some of the others. So here's the deal. A traditional barrel, all of the staves are a different size. So what we've learned is where that tree grows, that stave is made from, the roots are picking up flavors from the soil, the clay, decomposing foliage, vegetation. It does that for 70 to 100 years. So what we learned is, depending on the size of that stave and where that tree grew, that's going to be determined. That's going to be the determining factor on the contribution that piece of wood has to the taste profile of your bourbon. So trees on the top of the ridge adds robustness to the rye. Trees on the north side, where the moss, ferns, and lichens and algae grow, gives it a very earthy taste like peat does. And on the south side, where you get all your floral, sweet, soft, fruity flavors from. So, got that? So E.H. Taylor. What we're going to do is E.H. Taylor runs 6 to 8 years old. It has to be at least 4 years old. It's going to be 100 proof. But what you're going to notice is it's going to surprise you. So take it, and I just like to swirl this one around because it's 100 proof. Swirl it around and then bring it to your nose slowly. Some people, they'll tell you, I mean, you see people, they'll do one nostril, then they do the other nostril, then they'll open up their mouths, they'll take, doesn't matter. It works for you, but as long as you approach them all the same way, you're going to be consistent with your nose. All right? Got it? What do you notice about the Taylor?
Got a little heat.
Got the heat. You're right. You can pick up on heat on that one. All right. So let's do this water thing. We're going to get rid of these others, and let's give Taylor a shot. And let's see what happens. Sip of water first. Now let's take that Taylor and bump it up against our lips, just like we've done the others. Not too bad. But I can still pick up on the spiciness and the heat. And it made my lips tingle more. So if you notice that, so that tingling will tell you in advance that there's a lot of heat and the proof is going up. So when you encounter that on a product for the first time, what it means to you is to get past the alcohol. If I've got an intensity on my lips like that and on the tip of my tongue, what it means is to do this one, I need to hold a larger sip of water in my mouth. Otherwise, the alcohol is going to be the dominant factor. So take a bigger sip of water, and let's take a swig of this E.H. Taylor. It's hard to believe it's the same mash bill.
Agreed.
It's the very same mash bill, and the only difference is where it's sat in the warehouse, and then we bottle it at 100 proof. So you got that?
Yep.
Now, so Taylor in one hand, and let's pick up that Weller in the other. Swirl them around and nose these two. Nose your Weller first. Notice you can pick up on those candy fruity sweat. Can you get that? Isn't that amazing? Now watch what happens when you do the Taylor. Same thing. But those sweet flavors aren't there. I get the heat. What are you picking up on?
Grain spice.
A lot of spice.
So much heat.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, definitely more grain.
And a little bit lighter sweetness, like vanilla versus a richer brown sugar, candied brown sugar kind of flavor in the Weller.
Yes. So when you do that, if you have friends coming over and they're in the habit of drinking wine or craft beers or IPAs, and you want to sit down and spend some fun time with them, start with the wheated bourbon, like your Wellers. But now you can see why, because Weller with those fruity sweet flavors lends itself nicely to the sweet flavors of a wine. And so it's a nice, easy transition before you send them over to pH Taylor at 100 proof. Okay, so you ready? I'm going to go at this Taylor again. So this time, hold a different amount of water in your mouth and take away the Taylor again. Wow. I back off on that water, and that spiciness that you just mentioned a moment ago, it's all up in your face. Now it's really intense. So that shows you how you can do this. All right, and now let's do it without any water. That same product, now let's take it neat, straight up, and see what we get. Now you can really pick up on the heat. I like that comment, Adam. So Adam, tell them what you wrote.
I said the mouthfeel this EHT is awesome when done the Freddie way. It's different. It's a lot different. I like it a lot.
Isn't that funny? So if you do this with 3 or 4 of them, a lot of times you'll stumble upon a bourbon or maybe a whiskey that you've been drinking for years. And just by doing something crazy like what we're doing, you realize, well, I'd be dipped. These flavors have been here all along, and I never even encountered them. So I just tell folks, never, ever get content with drinking your favorite bourbon a certain way, because there might be a little treasure chest of other flavors just waiting to be discovered. So next up, we're going to Blanton's. Now, I want to show you 2 things. So we're going to do, hold on to your Taylor, and let's do the Blantons. Now, don't swirl it around, okay? Just let them stabilize a little bit. Bring them up to your nose, just like this. No swirling, just bring them up to your nose. Hey, I see that. All right. Joshua's got his Blantons there. He's good to go. I'll tell you a crazy one while he's doing that. Okay, so you ready for this? Watch this. Joshua, look at your label. Look at your label bottle.
Yes,
Your
sir.
bottle. All right, so what rick did yours come from?
Mine come from Rick number 1.
Excellent. What's your date? What's your date of dump?
6/25/20.
Now listen, I don't know what the chances are of something like this happening. You ready for this?
Yes, sir.
I'm drinking the very same.
No
I'm
way.
drinking
Got
the very same bourbon from the same barrel, bottled on the same day as Jonathan.
Barrel number 441.
That's Josh? It's Joshua, right?
Yes, sir. That's me.
All right. So we're drinking the very same bourbon.
Wow.
So what are the chances? What are the chances of something? What's yours?
It's
Which one do you have, Rodney?
Nick number 1.
Oh, mine is 56, 9/27/18.
Got an oldie.
Isn't that funny? So just that alone, if you had Joshua's bottle and Randy's bottle and Adam's bottle, and y'all were sitting around sipping, you could actually taste subtle differences between these 3 single barrels.
Freddie, I think you
But-
just started a sick invite.
Hey,
about
don't
to say,
don't
I
see
got a
anyone
20
carpool to your house because we will. We've done much crazier.
Oh gosh. All right, so you ready? So
Yes, sir.
let's go down this lane. So you got your Blantons, right? And you got your Taylor. Nose them.
It's very similar to me.
I like that mash bill 2 better.
Agreed.
All right.
Blanton
Now
seems a little
now
more
let's swirl
subtle.
them around. Swirl them around now. Swirl them around. Let's stir them up a little bit. I always like to look at the coating on the side of my glass because it tells me a little bit about that bourbon. I look to see how pronounced the coating is. And what you'll notice is, even though E.H. Taylor's 100 proof, it actually has a heavier coating than the Blantons.
Yeah, it seems to hold the glass better.
All right. So what does that mean? The first thing it means is it means that the E.H. Taylor has more corn in it. So inherent in corn, grain oils and fatty acids, and corn has a bunch of them in it. And so what it tells you is the mouthfeel on the Taylor at 100 proof is going to linger longer than the Blantons. Blanton's younger, sitting in warehouse H, has some heat associated with it. So watch what happens. You're going to get the spiciness on the nose. But when we taste this, you're in for a surprise because I'm going to show you Blantons won't linger as long as your Taylor. And even though it's a higher proof,
He'll be back in. He had the same problem last night. We should all chip in and get him some faster internet speed.
Yeah, what's the FiOS level out there?
Gone.
Internet.
Hey,
Or is it
I volunteer to go to his house and set his network up.
Hey, that's what happens when you're in Kentucky like that. When you're in Kentucky like that, choices is limited.
Yeah.
Is Jody Juniper Firewall and
did that with this.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll help if some of us turn off our cameras. Maybe it's also a Zoom thing.
Well, no, it's because they only had like 4 people on their little test call last night. So if the same thing happened with 4 people, this ain't. Yeah.
Well, man, let's just
Yeah,
take a
it's
half a
always
second while
crazy.
we got one to say how awesome this is, and cheers. Someone say whiskey, everybody.
Yeah,
Salud, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I appreciate all y'all.
There he is.
Thank you, everybody.
all right, so you ready to rock and roll?
Here
So
we are.
Let's take
Born ready.
that sip. Let's take that sip.
Take it from the top.
Welcome back.
Start all over.
Well, that about wraps it up for those of you that didn't get a chance to taste. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. That always happens when your signal goes away, and then you realize when you get back on, they're talking about something entirely different, and you wonder, what did I miss? All right,
No, we,
so
we
what
were
we're
just
gonna do
discussing
is-
that we were all going to get together and get you some faster internet speed, Freddie.
No, what I heard was carpooling, all coming to somebody's house. I heard
We're
that.
gonna do.
We're gonna come to your house and install it ourselves.
Freddie, I volunteered to come Central Networking for you.
Yeah, we're carpooling over to set up that new internet.
Yeah.
I'm an excellent driver. I'm an
Booking
excellent
the party bus as we speak.
You're gonna have so many Susans on a bottle.
All right, so everybody's had that sip of water, right?
Yes, sir.
So now let's take this Blanton and bump it up against our lips, just like we did the Taylor. And watch. You can feel a little bit of tingle on your lips. That's my dog over here. She's got heart trouble. So anyway, but did you notice something? You stick out your tongue to taste it. It's lighter. The viscosity is not the same as it was with the Taylor. Did you notice that?
Doesn't stick as much.
A little bit.
Exactly. Okay, so that's part of a younger bourbon. So 6 to 8 years going in and out through the char, I'm going to get a lot of flavors, but it takes a while chemically for the alcohol to break down the caramelized sugars, the saps and rosins that are deep within that oak stave. I'm going to give you an example, and if you've never done this, get back in the kitchen and become a mad scientist. I'm going to show you how this works. So you char the barrel. There's 7 different degrees of char, depending upon the color and some of the caramelized notes that you're looking for. So you put that sugar in a pan on the stove, you turn up the fire. Have you ever noticed when it first starts to melt, it's a clear liquid, right? Simple syrup, bottom line. It's a clear liquid. But you'll notice it's melting down near the base of the pan, but the other pile is still right there. Now watch how this works. This is so cool. I was always fascinated with doing this. I used to like to make sugar syrup when I was a kid. So what you do is that fire, after the heat gets on it, will actually onto the sugar. It will begin to caramelize, right? So that's how you make caramel. So it starts to caramelize. This is where it gets, this is what blows your mind. If you watch closely, something amazing will happen. Remember, the heat is coming up through that sugar. And it will be caramel, it will be caramelizing at the base. Sugar will be here, and all of a sudden you realize the sugar at the top, where the heat's coming out, will begin to melt, and then the whole thing collapses down. If you've never done this, do it. And why am I telling you that? Because when you char the inside of that barrel, the charred area is what you see. But that heat has gone all the way into that wood. And it has broken down those saps and rosins and the sugars in the fiber of the wood. But your bourbon's got to get out there and hang with it for a little bit to bring those flavors back into your product. So that's why low and slow is good with your older bourbons, and that's why the Weller tastes so smooth and you get these extra flavors, is because of that particular process. Kind of cool? So now I know Saturday morning everybody's going to be burning sugar on their stove, so that's fine. Okay. What are you doing? I'm doing an experiment. Okay, all right, so here you go.
Hey, Freddie, can I refer you when my wife gets mad at me?
It's only if you really screw up that pan by burning the sugar too bad and scorching it. But, you know, you
Hey, Freddie, we do. I'm
Huh?
sorry. We did have a question. I was curious about this too, but someone asked because I'm a very big cigar smoker myself. But we have Gary Morris who wanted to know, what is your favorite cigar?
I've got a couple of them. I really like Cohibas. just because they're not a monster. And when I'm sitting around and I'm sipping on my bourbon and stuff, I like the chop. It's a very fine chop, so it's smaller. It burns slow, so I don't feel rushed. But also, it's mild enough that it doesn't overwhelm the bourbon. It complements it. So I used to do McAdoo's, and I did those with my Wellers, and I would do the Cohibas with my Stag. Just the way I am. But I've gotten some folks have given me some really pretty cool cigars where they hand wrap them and stuff like that. You just made me think of something. I want to say something. Okay, listen. I am totally honored to be with y'all this evening. I'm going to show you about history, and it's funny you should mention that about the cigar. I'm going to show you something that happened. So I do a lot of private tastings, and I did a lot of them before the COVID thing hit. And then after COVID hit, basically, this is my method of communicating with folks. But I was doing this private tasting with a guy who was a broker for thoroughbred horses here in Lexington. And he wanted to do a private tasting, and he had an array of products that I was like, I always wondered what some of these whiskeys taste like. And he was like, here we go. So here's what happens. So we're doing this, and he did not know me. He just heard about me from a number of folks. They said, you know, you really need to have this guy do a tasting with you and all that stuff. So I get invited to his home. We hadn't made visual contact. So I'm scheduled to be out there at a certain time, and I pull up in the driveway in my little old truck. And there he is with this biggest limo-looking car out there, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Back down this little country road, and this big old house shows up. The house goes back to the 1700s, has horsehair plaster in it and all this stuff. And when I knock on the door and he opens it, he just looks. And I'm like, I guess this is a surprise, huh? Because his perception was, when you think about the industry, his perception did not include someone like me. And so he didn't really understand how I happened to be the person knocking on his door. Now, I want to tell you something about history. History can be baggage, or it can be an enhancer. So here's what happened. So we get in there and we get to tasting and doing some of the stuff that we're doing here now. We're opening up all these different flavors. He's having a blast. And he says, oh, I got some Van Winkle cigars here. Want to try one? I'm like, yeah, sure. So he's got the Pappy. We got the Van Winkle cigars. And he said, you know, I was kind of surprised when you knocked on my door. And I said, I gathered that by the way you kind of like look. And it was like one of these things like, do I want to let you in my house? Or, you know, what are you doing here? You know? So I'm just laid back. And I'm just wearing my Buffalo Trace stuff. And so, so we go in there, and he says, it was the craziest thing. So we're sitting there, and he said, Freddie, your history, your family's history at the distillery is amazing. Now, he's got this glass of Pappy, and here's what's funny. So he's swirling around, and he's about to take a drink of it, and he says, if you don't mind me asking, because your background is kind of weird to be at that distillery for many years, he said, if you don't mind me asking, he said, how did your family come to be at Buffalo Trace Distillery? And so now he's about to take his drink. He's asked the question, and he's about to take a good sip of his Pappy. And just as he gets it up his mouth, I said, really, it was because of a plantation owner by the name of Colonel West. And he fathered 2 kids. And that offspring of that happened to be my grandfather's family. And this guy, he doesn't even get his pappy to his, with his lips, and he drops his glass and he looks at me and he says, Freddie, I'm a West.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Whoa.
He said, that was part of my family. He says, there were two brothers. One brother stayed on the business side of the whiskey making, and the other brother came out here, and they had two plantations. And he says, that was my family. So once again, Conduit. And we got to talking, and he started researching his family tree. And he was able to run this back, and we have now identified the two kids that Colonel West fathered by Aunt Alice. And the way that my family ended up being near Buffalo Trace, the plantation was down the river from Buffalo Trace, was because when slavery was abolished, they had been together for years. And he wanted her to go back to Virginia proper, and she agreed to do that, provided that he would give land so that my family could be self-sustaining and they wouldn't be dependent on anybody, and they could raise their own farm, do their own grains and their horses and all that stuff. And that's how I came to be here.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. And so now we communicate back and forth with each other, and we're putting some pieces together, and we're looking at our family tree, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And I told him, I said, I would have never, ever thought when I knocked on the door of your house that I would be meeting a distant part of the heritage of my family.
Mm.
So you see my grandfather's picture down at the distillery. He doesn't look like an African-American. He really looks like an old seasoned vineyards guy or something like that. He's got really pretty silver hair, and he always grunted, hey, boy. So I thought it was kind of cool myself. But anyway, so that's the story. So now, why am I telling you all this? We're about to taste the Blantons. You ready for this? So what actually happened was Colonel Blanton would try to win political favors. And so he had Warehouse H built. The Scottish and Irish had shown Granddad and them how to build these old warehouses to extract really fast. And a metal-clad warehouse does just that. So what they would do is in certain areas, there are honey spots. And so he would have Granddad go in and pull honey barrels, and he would then open those barrels up, and he would share them with the politicians and the business folks around the area. And that's how we got to stay open during Prohibition. So fast forward, Elmer is trying to jumpstart the industry. Bourbon industry is dead. Think about the 60s to the 90s. Bourbon is no big deal. So Elmer is of Scottish descent, and he decided he wanted to create a single barrel bourbon modeled after a single malt Scotch. And so what happened was Elmer had my dad go into the warehouse and pull some of those honey barrels down. He tasted from those, and that became the product that we're about to taste right now. That became known as Blanton's. Now, my father, Elmer, these old guys, never ever make another person look bad. And this had existed. Dad and Elmer were in the Air Corps together. Back then it was called the Air Corps. It was part of the Army, and that's the Air Force. But they were in the Air Corps together. Dad was a civil engineer. He made landing strips. And Elmer was a bombardier. And Elmer's planes landed on Dad's landing strips during the war. Fast forward, Dad drops these barrels down. Elmer picks one of those barrels. That becomes Blanton's. Now, a few years back, Elmer becomes one of only 3 living master distillers to have ever had a whiskey named after him. And the other 2 was Booker No with Jim Beam, that's Booker's, and Jimmy Russell with Wild Turkey, Russell Reserve. Jimmy's the only one of the 3 that's still alive today. However, at this event, when Elmer was being recognized with all these journalists and writers and all the other distillery folks, at that event, my dad and I are sitting there, and Elmer looks at everyone and he says, I really appreciate all the attention and all the recognition that you have given me. He says, but you do need to understand that Jimmy is the one who pulled the barrels that I was able to make Blantons from. My dad cried. He would have carried that to his grave. He would have never, ever told anyone that Elmer wasn't the one that pulled those barrels. I pulled it. He would have never, ever done that. And at that event, with all those dignitaries, Elmer acknowledged Daddy as the one who selected the barrels that he was to pull and make Blantons from. So that's why Blantons is kind of near and dear to me. Every now and then people will do a barrel pick, and they'll take some of them and it'll become a Freddie's pick. And they'll, on the little medallion, it's Freddie's picture, and it's a lot of crazy stuff. But we share the bottles, and we do a lot of special toastings with the team and stuff like that. So let's go down through here and let's see what Blanton is all about. And then we're going to wrap this booger up. We'll do a couple more questions. But you ready? So now we got the Blantons. Okay. If you want to really go down memory lane, take your Blantons and then take your Weller. Okay. Take your Blantons and do your Weller. I'm going to show you something. Blantons and Weller. All right. Swirl them around. Nose the Weller first. Now, do the Blanton. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So let's do what we were just talking about. Remember we talked about when we touched our lips, it was a little bit lighter, didn't have the same viscosity. So let's take a sip of water and see what happens when we open it up. Sip of water. Hold the water in your mouth and take a swig of that Blanton's.
Delicious.
Somebody just put a note up here that says, let me know if you learn how to take smaller sips.
I need to learn that myself.
Why you just got to bring the bottle with you.
Oh, yeah. But here's where I'm taking you. Did you notice something? It's 93 proof. So your lips tingle a little bit more. But when you took a sip of Blanton's, it's proof. I mean, it's just all over the front of your mouth. When it gets to the mid part of the tongue, mid part of the palate, it starts to soften. And then when it gets to the back of your throat, it just smooths right out. Got it? All right.
Yes, sir.
Let's just do it neat or straight up now and watch this. Oh yeah. The flavors are there, but it sits lightly on the palate. Notice
That finish is gentle too.
Huh?
The finish, it's very gentle.
That's exactly right. Now, watch this. Take your Weller, take a sip of the Weller, and you will be able to notice the difference in the mouthfeel.
Oh, wow.
It's nuttier. Isn't that amazing? How cool is that?
This is amazing.
Unbelievable.
So, there we go. So we have done our tasting. Hopefully, you got a chance to taste some products a little bit different. You can get bourbons, different distilleries, and you can play around that way. I like to do that. I started. I did this with the E.H. Taylor. I was fooling around with it, and I was fooling around with the Eagle Rare, and I went back to that Taylor, and I stuck my nose down in there. I swirled it around like this after I've been sipping on these others for a bit. Swirled it around like that, stuck my nose down in there, and I said, I be darned, banana.
Randy.
And I'm like,
should I tell him?
What's that?
Oh, man.
So I used to do a lot of live reviews, and I didn't realize it, but I guess a few whiskeys in a row, I gave the tasting note of banana. And then I was doing a live, and people started commenting on the live, I bet he tastes bananas. And then it just took off. Everyone started sending me pictures of bananas and banana memes and taking pictures of my videos and turning those into banana pictures and
banana everything.
Banana everything. And then when I met David Whitmer from MGPI, their master distiller, at the end of my podcast interview, he handed me a box. It was all wrapped up, and I opened it up, and it was filled with banana runts. But the funniest is, and what really made it stick, was we were tasting to pick a Russell's Reserve with Eddie, and there was probably a dozen people in the room, and we tasted our 3 barrels, and we knew which one we wanted to pick. And then the barrel coordinator left the room, and Eddie goes, hey, I've got a 4th barrel. Do y'all want to try it? It can't be a Russell's because its proof's going to be a little below the 110. We could make it a Kentucky Spirit. And of course, everybody just wanted to drink with Eddie. So they said, yeah, let's try it. So they try it, and everyone's, giving their tasting notes. And I picked up a little bit of banana. And I mean, I know about esters. I know what isoamyl acetate is and all that stuff. I mean, I get that there's a little isoamyl acetate in almost all bourbons, but maybe not detectable levels. And so I taste it, and it's not my favorite because it's in that banana profile that I kind of don't like. And the guy next to me whispers, he says, do you like it? And this guy's really well respected in the North Texas whiskey community. And he whispers, do you like it? And I said, not really. And he whispers back, he says, why not? And he said, if I say, everyone's going to laugh at me. And he said loud as shit so everyone could hear it, do you taste bananas? And Eddie hears him say that I taste bananas, and Eddie gets offended. And he's like, who tastes bananas in my whiskey? And it was like, I do, sir. And then he was like, somebody get him out of here. This isn't Jack Daniels. And so now I'm infamous for tasting banana in whiskey. So, but I am very sensitive to that particular ester. So that's
hey, Randy, I've decided next barrel release we do, you got to dress up in a banana costume.
Oh, please let there be a banana sticker.
For that.
Okay,
he already has a meme for
Hater
that.
sticker.
Start saying peanut butter jelly time.
Hey guys, real quick before we go on, a very quick intermission. So because I know you guys have some questions for Freddie, but before you do that, maybe let's get 30 seconds. I want everybody, if you do have a special bottle, because this is a special memory, and I know everybody's been talking about it, let's pour up something like really cool, because I know this is going to be something that you guys are going to remember. So if you have a special bottle that you want to pour, if you have something that's close to your heart, let's go ahead and break that bad boy out now. Let's break it out now.
Way ahead of you, baby.
Here
we go. Woo.
Yeah.
Well,
the sweet sound of freedom.
I want to try that.
I knew Freddie likes William Weller, so I got my William LaRue out last night while we were on the pre-call call.
Yeah.
I
think I'll be right over. I didn't know that he likes it, but I just happen to have mine here too. So
because Freddie has the same bottle, this is now mine.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most special bottle.
I was gonna grab some Bookers, but in honor of that story about the Blantons, I got some straight from the barrel here.
I'm right there with you, Alex. That's what I reached for.
That's what I grabbed.
The barrel, baby.
Fresh crack.
Steve, if you grabbed something else, I would have been disappointed, bro. Like this.
Hey, Rodney, I haven't
A jam.
in a while.
Yeah, no.
There you go.
It's not getting cracked until next year. This is that 93 Blanton that's not getting cracked till next year. My
I was
daughter's
just
wedding.
about to ask.
Dude,
Freddie,
who's
if
more
I've
important,
got a
your Freddie
92
Johnson or your
Blanton's.
daughter, son? Who's more important? Like, come on.
I get Freddie's favorite.
This is my daughter's birth year. This was dumped in my 93, my daughter's birth year, and it's getting cracked open on her wedding day next year.
Nice.
Well, go ahead and get you some of that Pappy 20 that that Freddie talked about in his there you go. There you go.
All right, so Glenn's got the Pappy. All right, so this one, remember I was telling you about when I get special bottles. I get special bottles with special friends. This is Blanton's that normally goes to Poland and to Greece.
I just want to see it.
And if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it or not. Try to get it. If you notice, it's signed.
Signature there.
There are a bunch of signatures on it. There's not very much left, okay? But this one, bottled 8/16/18. Let's see, what do they do with this one? It's 100 proof, warehouse age, Rick 35, from barrel number 1225, but like 8/16/18. It's a single barrel, but these are the ones that go over to Poland and places like this. And I did a special tour for an international account rep for his family. His family came over here from Greece, and I gave them a special tour. And as a way of saying thank you, they gave me this Blanton's. And this is all I've got left, so don't come here. But for this moment, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to do a taste with you guys on this one. So everybody's got a special pour.
Hold on one second. Let me go ahead and pour mine. I just had to finish up what was in my glass.
Very, very cool, Freddie. Actually, this straight from the barrel is from 8/15/18 from the same Rick and warehouse. So just a day later.
I got a day before that at 8/14/18.
There you go.
Oh, how cool is that? Isn't that amazing?
I'm gonna go ahead and crack open some of this bad boy, this OFC.
Hang on, I'm on my way.
I'm gonna put mine away.
Yeah, look at Rodney.
I told you, Freddie, I'm bringing this down to Kentucky, man.
Rodney, hang on here just a minute. I'm scratching the screen. I'm trying to see if I can do a little scratch and snip. Yeah, a little scratch and snip on your.
Hey, Rodney, I didn't get that sample.
Yeah, me neither.
My bad.
I was saying it was either that or mellow corn, right, Rodney?
I know, right?
Rodney, this little book, chapter 1, is the
Rodney, did you just pull that OFC?
Rodney,
did you just pull that OFC?
Where have you been, Justin?
Yeah.
Rodney, this little book is the bottle I bought from you the first night I met you.
Very cool.
How special, sir.
How cool is that?
All right, I'm going to share mine.
Gary?
I'm going to share mine because all
3
of y'all,
years ago.
all of y'all have been over to my house, and I've given y'all, anything that I have open, but very few of you have tasted this bottle. It's a Jack Daniel's from 1984, and it came in this box. You can see how deteriorated the box is. But when my grandfather passed away, he wasn't really a drinker, but every year at Christmas, he would drink Jack Daniel's and eggnog, but he only would have like one drink a year. And so this was his bottle of Jack Daniel's, and it was given to me, and it's started to oxidize and it doesn't taste right anymore, but it's one of the most precious bottles that I have. So I figured I'd drink that with Freddie tonight.
Nice.
Cool. I'll tell you something crazy that we were having a discussion with Elmer about some of these old bourbons and whiskeys that people are finding. And a lot of times what Elmer shared with us, and Randy, you can try this. He said that a lot of times what happens, it sits in there and between the cork and the glass, if it's not a real pure glass, the glass just really started getting cleaned up here recently. He said a lot of those off flavors that you're getting is really from the cork and the glass, not from oxidation. And so he suggested when you get a really old bottle of bourbon or whiskey, pour some of it out in the glass, the stopper or the cork back in the bottle, and just let it breathe for a little while. And he says a lot of times those flavors, once it gets past that stuff that it's picked up, it returns back to the original flavor again, and it doesn't taste as bad as you basically just get it out and pour a drink. It'll return to its natural taste profile. So it's kind of interesting. So we were surprised at that. And he said, no, so a lot of people think their bourbon's gone bad or it's oxidized. He said, you just need to let it breathe for a little bit. Kind of crazy. All right.
This OFC is amazing, by the way, guys.
Stop bragging, dude.
The next person that comes over, I'll pour a sample out of it.
I'll see you tomorrow.
I'm on my phone. I'll be there in a minute.
I'm getting there first.
I'll bring you Zoom with me.
I'll be behind you about 5 minutes after this.
I'm at your
I
front
live
door.
right behind them. So.
I'm not sure why Rodney told y'all that because I tried it and it's
Bananas?
No, it's not bananas at all.
Bananas?
I mean, it's OFC, so I'm excited to try it, but it's not the best in the world. It's a little overblown a little bit. So if you don't get a sample from Rodney, don't feel too bad.
They've also got it at Whiskey
share.
Cake in Las Colinas.
So let me share something with you that's very important. Okay. If you've had the opportunity to taste Double Eagle, the Eagle Rare 20-year-old.
I have not.
Okay. So here's what's going on. Remember the last drop. And we've created a refrigerated aging chamber in one of our warehouses. So what we're doing now is normally what you would do is if you were trying to get a 23, a 25, or some of these, there's so little left in the barrel that the oak and the char have become the dominant factor. And so you're going to try to bottle it and process it. Sometimes you'll bring it out of the barrel. A lot of them do this. You bring it out of that barrel to stop the aging and just put it in a stainless steel tank. But it's because of where the barrel is sitting, the atmosphere and everything's still moving the whiskey in and out. But it's doing it at room temperatures. We know that bourbon goes dormant at 45 degrees. So what we did was we've created this giant chamber, and the temperature in there stays between 46 and 47 degrees. So what we're now doing is we're taking bourbons like the OFC, like the Double Eagle, like some of our Pappies, some of the Sazeracs, the William Wellers, and we're putting them into this refrigerated unit at different stages of its aging. And from that, right now, we've got some barrels that have never been in a regular warehouse. Their whole life has been in this chamber. And we are now feeling comfortable that we can produce a 30, 40, or 50-year-old bourbon that's just as soft and sweet as the Double Eagle. And the yield is a lot greater.
Wow.
So you're going to be hearing more and more about that. But you watch, your OFC is going to start to mellow out. The Double Eagle is going to be damn good. The Eagle Rare that we just kicked out, we changed it to 101 proof. But you'll notice that it's not a lot of heat in it. I still prefer the George T. Stagg though. I like Stagg Junior for some reason right now. I used to like
Which
Stagg
batch?
Antique, but
I was just about which batch of Stagg Junior?
The new one he was talking about.
Yeah,
14 then, or is it 15, the unreleased one?
Ooh, yes. Well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so the one that's coming out right now is I think 130.4. That's the one that's hitting the shelf now.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have the remember when Stagg was 140, 143, 144, 5.
Hazmat.
Yeah. But those things, you could take a sip of that or pour it over ice. And it just, it was all over the inside of your mouth. It was really good. But the humidity level changed. And when that moisture came in, it lowered the proof. So we went through two 2 releases of Stag that were, it's the first time it's ever happened to us, that the proof was less than what it went into the barrel at 15 years earlier. But now we've got it back up to, so we're actually mapping the warehouses, and Holland is putting the barrels in a different spot so that doesn't happen anymore. But anyway, salute. Thank you. Everybody's got their special drink.
Thank you.
What a special evening. Rodney, Randy, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. You guys, I appreciate the exchange. Next time I get a banana, I'll think of you, Randy.
We got banana meme going.
But the other crazy one is a deal. I see you there, Joshua. The other one is if you get a good straight rye whiskey, it will smell like dill, like a dill pickle. Ooh. Yeah. So check that out. And once you get this, like you do this Taylor, and you'll do like get one that's got that banana smell and get that straight rye whiskey, and you'll get the deal.
Oh, man.
All right, listen, guys. Any other questions before we wrap?
Hey, Freddie.
Hey, in reference to a question, I would like to say, I want you to share with them, if you can leave us with this, and I think Joshua may have had a question before I did, but you can answer Josh's question, and then if you can leave us with the story that you told us last night about your grandson when he turns 21.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh.
But I'll let Joshua ask his question first, and then you can leave us with that.
So, Freddie, my only question is about your refrigerated warehouse you have there, knowing the story of bourbon and how the 4 seasons greatly affects every barrel. How is that impacting the flavor of the barrels that are coming out of that refrigerated warehouse?
And Freddie, before you answer that question, I didn't even see Joshua, but I heard that damn accent, and I know no one else on this phone call sounds like that. That is Texas at its finest, sir.
Nice.
Hey, in reality, it's South Georgia accent, but I'm in Texas now, so.
Well, I knew it was something. It stuck out, brother.
That sounded more like it was Southern than it was Texan.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so Josh, the way it works is the ambient temperature of the earth is about 51 to 52 degrees. So if I have walls that are thick and insulated, and if I have barrels on the exterior walls, and I've got these barrels sitting in the middle portion of the warehouse, the seasons don't really affect the bourbon because all of our warehouses are climatically controlled. So we have steam heat going to every warehouse on the property. So we have barrels with thermometers in them, and we have humidistats throughout all of the warehouses on the property. And so we don't have a lot of those kinds of things going on because we continue to age the bourbons based on the ideal temperature so they don't get too hot or too cold. But down on the lower levels where these types of products come from, the barometric pressure moves the whiskey in and out of the wood, not the temperature. So we don't care what the season is. The walls and stuff have got the insulation there, and that temperature inside next to the earth is constant. So you get a very slow process of moving the whiskey in and out of the wood without a lot of heat. So basically the wood gets saturated because the moisture level down on the lower levels is a little bit high. It slows down the evaporation rate. So you really get these really cool flavors without a lot of heat. So you don't have those 4 seasons that affect the barrels on your bottom level.
Awesome.
Kind of crazy. That's mid floors and above. So that's why you have to move those barrels around, is because a vertical aging warehouse in the summertime, temperature can reach 130 degrees. So if I'm a maker's mark, that's why they have to rotate their barrels. Because if they don't, it'll cook the whiskey up there. So you have to bring those barrels down and put some others up there. There's an art to doing that because each time you touch the barrel and move it, you change its taste profile.
Yeah.
So cool question. Cool question.
Interesting. Thank you for that answer.
Mm-hmm. So here we are. So I got this bottle, and Osiris is my grandson, and I am not making him work at Buffalo Trace or do any of that, because my dad didn't do that to me either. It's kind of like one of those crazy things. But I've had him. He started coming down there, rolling barrels around with me when he was quite small, and I was presented this very special bottle of bourbon, and I don't normally save my bourbon, but this particular one I'm saving for him. And when he gets 21, we're going to do a toast. Kind of like somebody else was talking about, they had one and their son's getting ready to be 21 and they're going to, same thing. And so that's the only bottle that I will not open until that happens. My hope is that I live long enough to share that drink with him. But if I don't, Randall, it'll be just like what we were talking about with that bottle of Jack. If I don't, he knows that the bottle is here, and he knows what it is for. So if it's not me, maybe it'll be his mom, and they can do a toast in honor of my family and the legacy and all of that stuff. But I only have one bottle in all the bottles that I've got around here that I will not open, but it's for that reason. And I just trust that I live long enough to do it, to have a moment like with him, like I had with my dad and my mother. That's my bucket thing.
Where did that bottle come from? What makes that bottle so special?
I don't know. I'm not talking about that bottle. Damn it! You got me, Rodney. You got me crying, man. You got me crying. So
I'm not crying. You're crying.
Who's crying?
Who's chopping onions around here?
I'm glad he asked,
real bad this year.
I was definitely curious as well.
Huh?
I said I'm glad the
was
question was asked, because I was definitely curious what the bottle is. So.
Oh, it's pretty good. I've actually got I've got two of them, and one is a CYPB, and the other one is just over here.
It's memory moments, right?
So here's what started the whole thing. So it started with a bottle of Pappy, and then I did the CYPB, and the one that I really wanted to taste is the E.H. Taylor 4-grain. So this is kind of like accumulation of a lot of stuff. I've got a bottle that they did that was dedicated to me when we did the Neat documentary, and I've got one other, and I'm probably going to open them up, but I'm going to let him decide which one he wants to do. I've got them, and I've not felt like I needed to open one of them yet. But that's what we were talking about. That's what Rodney and I were talking about. And somebody made a comment to me. They were in here, they were doing something, and they were blowing smoke, and it pissed me off, to be honest with you. I don't mind when we sit and we sip and we share, but when you've got your good stuff and you brag about it to your friends, and you ask them if they ever had any of it, and they tell you no, and you don't even offer it to them, you just put the bottle back. What's the purpose? What did you just tell that person? You just told that person that the whiskey in that bottle is more important than you.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, and so that's why I opened up that other bottle. But I mean, this guy looks at this, and his comment was kind of like your OFC, Rodney. His comment was, "Man, do you know how much that's worth? I got a couple of Pappies," and it's like, yeah. And they said, "Well, that's worth a lot of money." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "It's worth a lot of money." And I was like, "Yeah." And I said, "You want a drink?" And it's like, they're like, oh. you let me drink it? I said, well, you can have a drink with me, or you can go somewhere and pay $250 for a shot of it. I mean, that's your business. But the point is that once you cross that barrier and you realize sharing that bourbon with someone when you don't have to, and they realize the significance of it, as long as they don't shoot it. I mean, if I give you something like this and you swirl it around and you shoot it, I'm about to grab your butt by your ankles and I'm going to turn you upside down and I'm going to shake you till you regurgitate that whiskey 3 or 4 times, just so you appreciate the fact that you should have gulped it all down the first time. But I make light of it, and I mean, you've done that with your tastings with friends. You've got the friends that appreciate what you've offered them, and they sip it. But you have the novice that doesn't know any better. That's where you come in. They don't know any better, and they've always seen people swirl it around and shoot it, and they think that's the way it's supposed to drink, and it's supposed to be burning and harsh. And then, oh, that was really good, man. That was so smooth. Well, when you just hear those words like that, it means you just didn't taste anything. You just got rid of my whiskey is all you were doing. But that's what your club is about. And so that's my passion, Rodney, is that when you bring it out, take the time to help them appreciate it. Not being overly enthusiastic, tell them how great and wonderful it is. This is the best damn thing since sliced bread. You don't do that with them. You do what we just did, and you give them time to savor it. You give them time to mix it with a little bit of water. You have a little bit of dialogue with them. You talk about something that's an emotional connection that builds a bond between you and that bottle and that person.
Real experience.
Yeah, and they'll never forget it. But every time they see that bottle, they'll remember that who is it? Somebody just did that. Who was it that said that when they hooked up with Rodney, the first bottle? Who was that?
Gary Morris.
That was me. That was me.
All right. And isn't that funny, Gary? You remember that day.
Oh, yeah, very clearly.
So
Gary's my boy.
Yeah. So all this time, when you've been sharing that bourbon with friends and family, you've been planting seeds. You've been creating memory moments for yourself as far as others, and they will never forget that you took the time to do that with them. So I'm done. I'm going to put my bottles back away because y'all got me all hooked up, and I might have to open one of these damn things up, and then I'll be pissed at all of you. But I hope that it's been beneficial, and you've had a little bit of fun. I've seen some significant others that have been sitting in the background and they've been sipping. So I hope that everybody time and you felt like your time was well spent.
Freddie, you have already made me tell the wife that we are coming to Kentucky soon to do a tour of the distillery, so I can meet you in person and do this, not sitting at a computer screen as soon as all of this shit's over with.
We can do that.
Let's plan one say whiskey private tour.
Let's do it, Mark.
Now we're talking.
I was just there in August, and the tours are happening. I was very impressed with it.
Yeah. So we're limited to.
Y'all are one of the few distilleries that are actually doing the full tours. Everybody else is just doing tastings. It was very nice.
Yeah.
Bourbon kills anything.
Sanitizer for your insides.
Yeah. Between you, it was between Buffalo Trace and Lux Row. Everybody else did tastings only. It was great.
Yeah.
And I got a $60 bottle of Blantons. Woohoo!
I think we know which tour won out on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, but yeah, so we actually have 4 different tours that we're doing down there now. You make a reservation for them. So we do the Taylor tour, which we take you back over into Pompeii, where we uncover the original OFC distillery, and we're actually making an OFC product right now. The way that E.H. Taylor did it back in the 1800s with his vat. So we got that tour. We got a bourbon barrel tour where we show you how we make a batch of bourbon. We take you down that way. and then we've got what we call a behind the scenes tour, and then we have the traditional trace tour right now. But like I say, if you guys, if a bunch of y'all get together, like Randy, you, Rodney, any of you guys, Josh, any of y'all, if you get together, we can only take 8. But if you make your reservation in advance and tell them if you'd like to do a behind the scenes tour, and if possible, you know, you'd like to have me, or you can have any of the other tours, just say, hey, can we book a behind the scenes tour? They'll set it up for you. It's all complimentary, and it will just be your group. So it becomes a fun thing to do, and depending on what's going on, we have some places that we take you that's kind of fun to see what we're doing.
Freddie, now you know dang on well that nobody wants to have another tour, guys, at that Buffalo Trace.
Amen.
Well, let me tell you, Rodney, I got beat up. So what happened was they said, the manager said, would you stop telling people to come down to Buffalo Trace and take a tour with you? Because we're making people mad now because they don't want to take a tour with anybody else. And so they become very upset and they get really nasty and stuff. And I said, okay. So I just say, you're going to have a good time. Come take a tour. I can't promise you that it'll be me, but usually if it's in advance and they know that we've done something like this, especially with your club, and you mentioned, you know, Randy, you'll get a banana and maybe. There
it is. Even Freddie's on
it. Yeah, you get a banana and maybe a barrel stave or something. I don't know. But
when
I've
you're on my
enjoyed it.
podcast, if you don't present me with something banana, I'm gonna be so disappointed.
You're gonna get the flight on the tasting. You're gonna get a banana and a Glencairn.
Hey, when
That's
Freddie
perfect.
Johnson's ribbing you a little bit, you know you've arrived.
I know. I'm gonna have that sucker, like, I don't know, gold plated or something and mounted on the wall.
Go to the wall.
I do have to ask, how beautiful is it there in November?
Guys,
November, actually.
Ram, yeah. I'd like to share a story. You guys fine?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ram, go ahead.
Yeah, brothers. So, like someone say whiskey is my bourbon club. Bourbon, who introduced me to bourbon. Before that, I had like few bourbons, like from Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace. I had Eagle Rare. That was the first bourbon I had. Eagle Rare was the first bourbon I had, and I had it on ice. So after that, I tried Buffalo Trace actual bourbon, a Buffalo Trace bourbon. It burned me a little bit, so I liked Buffalo Trace a little bit. I like the burn.
You like the burn?
Yeah, I like the burn. But Buffalo Trace is like now I think of that, and it's like the proof is little like 90 proof, and now I have a lot of high proof bourbons. That time it was good. I liked it. Buffalo Trace was the first thing which hooked me up to the bourbon.
So
thank you, Eddie.
So Ram, what you're talking about is by design. There's a video that's getting ready to come out that Harlan Wheatley and I just did.
I sent you a message, Freddie, personal message. Buffalo Trace is the first distillery which got me hooked up to bourbon.
Right, and so that spiciness on the front end, Harlan, he did that by design. He wants that robustness on the front, but he wants the smoothness on the finish so that it doesn't continue to cook on the back of the palate. He wants it to finish out. It's called a balanced bourbon when it does that. So good choice.
I'm from India, and we don't have a lot of this technical stuff, and we just have alcohol in India. So once I came to US and I started tasting the liquor, right? It was Buffalo Trace.
And Ram lives in my neighborhood as well too. So
Yeah,
he's one of the original OG Someone Say Whiskey members.
Yeah, Rodney. Cheers, buddy.
Rodney corrupted him.
Yeah, we don't have like real drink like Blantons and stuff in India. We just
coming soon. We just
thank you.
Buffalo Trace just started a distillery over there. So
thank you.
Yeah.
My favorite quote from Ram was, "I tried it and it burnt my gums and I loved it."
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Indian drink gets you high. Okay, Indian drinks gets you high and it doesn't burn your gum.
But I think everybody missed Freddie's point there. He said Buffalo Trace is going to India. Is that what you said, Freddie?
Yeah. So what they've been doing is very quietly going about acquiring distilleries in different countries, and so they just now did a partner. They just struck a partnership with a distillery there in India. Was it is it Captain John's or something like that?
Captain John's? No.
Or something like that.
John Paul. John Paul.
Yeah, John Paul. Isn't that? It's one of it's whatever that one is. John Paul is something like that. But I was thinking it was Captain Morgan's when they said it. But yeah, so they're there. They just purchased a distillery up in Canada.
I'll move to India. I'm moving to India. Buffalo Trace is in India.
Yeah, so it'll start. You'll actually start seeing it there. But then they're going to be partnering. I think a lot of the distilleries are looking at what Jim Beam did with Suntory, where their master blenders are getting together and mixing different whiskeys and stuff together to create unique taste profiles. So it won't be a bourbon, but it will be a whiskey. All right, Justin, who is that you got with you there?
This is my son, JJ.
All right. What do you say, JJ?
Hi.
There you go.
Right there, raising them right.
Gary Morris, that kind of looks like your son, man. That's kind of scary.
Rodney, not all white people look alike, bro.
Just 75% of you.
No, it happened.
Hey, thanks for saying that, Rodney. So much, thank you. I have a friend who literally said the exact same thing to me just 2 days ago about the fact that you all look alike. Well, 75% of you.
Apparently, there are 4 people in the club that look like me. And
well, listen, it's nice what Justin's doing with JJ. The deal is they're memory moments, and you do things, you share things. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you do things with others. It doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but years later they come back and tell you, say thank you. They'll say, you probably don't even remember me. I hear that a lot. You probably don't even remember me, but you did something, you said something, you shared something with me, and I was going through a rough spell, and I really appreciate what you did because you got me to it. And maybe it's just something that you say. So as we move forward, I want to thank you for the time tonight. But just remember, what I had to learn with my dad was everybody has baggage. We all have baggage. It's not the fact that we have baggage. It's what you do with your baggage that makes a difference in the world that we live in today. So, baggage can be that, or it can be an enhancer, along with good bourbon, to make things better that you wished could have been better a long time ago. So, continue to taste and toast. And I've got a little bit of this one left of my little Polish Blantons. And I raise my glass to each of you, and I thank you very much for the evening.
Thank you, Freddie.
I'm going to rock and roll, and I'll see y'all on the next go-round.
God bless you, Freddie.
Cheers, everyone.
Hey, everyone, before you get off, I want to thank everybody as well for joining tonight. I want to thank y'all for being a dope community. Appreciate all the activity and everything you do. Freddie, you're speaking to some of the most active members that are in our club right now. So this was for all of our the majority of our most top contributors. So the people you see here is really what makes the community of Someone Say Whiskey. So to everyone on here, I want to say thank you and keep on doing what you do.
Amen.
And the
Thank
same
you,
for
admin.
Thank you,
admin.
All right.
And the rest of us are fast typers.
Cheers.
This content is being brought to you by the Bourbon Real Talk American Whiskey Aroma Kit. This is a tool that I put together to help all you whiskey aficionados out there develop your palates. You can sit down with the vials and train your senses, or you can sit down with a great dram and break that whiskey down to its components. If you have any interest of purchasing a kit of your own, head on over to bourbonrealtalk.com/shop and pick one up. Thank you for listening.